or at least silence it. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atchison.
Here. Now, about all my colleagues, we need to make sure we speak into the mics. It's hard for folks at home to hear us if we don't. First item is approval of the agenda. The only change that I'm aware of is the first item, presentations and recognitions, the community policing update. The Officer Williamson, who is the community policing officer, is sick today, so she's unable to be here, so that would be the one modification. So if I can have them, is there any other changes or corrections to the agenda? If I have a motion to have the agenda approved as revised to delete item A.
So moved.
Support? Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as revised, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. Next item of business is a presentation by the Battle Creek Habitat for Humanity, Mr. Robert Phillips.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Phillips from Battle Creek Area Habitat for Humanity, of which we're trying to get the name changed to Calhoun County Habitat for Humanity for obvious reasons. Not so sure how long it's been since the affiliates had all merged, but we do serve all of Calhoun County. And this is our 30th birthday, so been here for 30 years, had about 600 volunteers over that time, 25,000 volunteer hours, and we built almost 150 homes, countless wheelchair ramps, and countless minor home repairs. In your packet there, I gave you, we're coming back for the first time in quite a while to build a house here, to rehab a house on Terpenning for a veteran. That's our major project here. We're going to need support from the community. Our local volunteers that are in Battle Creek probably won't be driving back and forth every day to do that, so if we could get any support there, any funding we could get. The Battle Creek VA is actively recruiting a veteran or veterans for that home. They're using Silver Star, but anywhere we can get a veteran from is fine with us, as long as it qualifies financially and is willing to partner with us, and it has an area of need. Those are the three requirements to get a Habitat homeowner into the program. I got some statistics from the county VA the other day. It's, about 17% of your vets here in town are living in poverty, which is quite above the trend for the rest of the county, so there is certainly a need to be here building veteran housing. I went to I keep calling it the Housing Coalition meeting at the Homestead Bank a couple months ago or a month ago, and support there was outstanding. I was very surprised because I don't see that in Battle Creek. It's all individualized in Battle Creek, where here in Albion it seems to be a community effort. So I guess I come here to ask you, or what does Habitat do here? Do we do a house for a veteran every year? Is it something bigger? Where do we need to be? Who do I need to be in front of? You all have my cards, so any advice here? I've been getting a lot of advice from Dr. Armstrong, but so anything we can do. I mean, I've only been on the job for 4 months. I don't know Albion. I've been here about 4 times, so I need all the advice and the help I can get. But we'd love to be here in the future. city of Battle Creek has all the money that we can take, basically, for doing rehabs and builds. So if we were here, it would likely be doing veteran projects unless you had some other sort of idea. So we're wide open to whatever you have. We'll be here probably in April. So we have 6 or 7 months to find that volunteer support we need, 10 to 15 regular volunteers. And we can work generally on their schedule if it's something consistent on their end. So any advice you have for me, I'm all for it. Shoot me an email, call me, text me, whatever. I'm pretty excited to be here. Building veteran housing until you tell us otherwise. Any questions?
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. Excuse me, you stated that, and maybe I just didn't hear you because the tone was up and down, that you were going to be, did you say building a home in Albion, or is it a rehab?
Terpennine's a rehab.
It's a rehab, okay, so is there money for the rehab? Because you also stated that you need money as well. So can you elaborate on that just a little bit or clarify for me?
Over the next 6 months, I can probably get Terpenine funded, but if we did something more than that, then we'd probably need more funds. My concern, not if we were going to do veteran housing, is not the funding, it's the volunteer base.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing we need is our properties. I mean, if most of our properties now come from the land bank, and the land bank is out of property. Rehabs. They have vacant land everywhere, so we could do new builds, but those get expensive. So I don't know if the city's sitting on a lot of housing that's in some sort of foreclosure or not. I don't know if that exists here. City of Battle Creek has their own stock of housing that they're sitting on, just like the land bank normally would. So other than that, if it doesn't come from some level of government and through foreclosure, then it usually comes through donation is how we get our houses. So if Terpenine, or however it's said, runs from April through October or April through Christmas or something like that, then January 1st we could start all over. We have well over a year to find that second house and more volunteers.
What kind of skill sets do you need? Are you so to be a volunteer for this, what do you need to be able to do?
Yeah, any able-bodied person, basically. We have 2 very qualified licensed contractors on staff, and we have a third that's essentially a licensed contractor. He's not licensed, he's been doing it forever. But ideally, we could find that volunteer that has that knowledge, like Dr. Armstrong used to do here, that is the volunteer to lead that group. Essentially, it's not even affiliated with our volunteers or our staff.
Councilwoman Lawler, you had a question?
Thank you. What did you say the poverty level for homeless veterans were?
17% here. Not homeless, poverty.
Okay.
So that is the clientele we deal with, 30 to 80% of area median income.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I just have a comment. I just want to say that there, back, I guess, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, Habitat was visible in the community, and they built several houses in Precinct 1, I want to say. Is that Sycamore Street? Is that Sycamore Street up there, Sonia? Precinct 1, I think that's Sycamore, and there's some on Albion Street there. Okay, so they were very visible, and they built some nice homes, and the families that received them, they're still in them today. So I think it's a good thing, and I just want to commend you, and I hope it works out. I'd love to see homes rehab and built in Albion again.
Yeah, we just closed on a house in Battle Creek for a family of 7 that was in dire straits. And so, that's why I've been a Habitat volunteer now on staff, but for 25 years. You get 7, that's a family of 7 out of shambles, really, into a safe and affordable housing.
So if you want, Thank you. So if you want volunteers, just contact you and just say, give you our name and number, or the community members can contact you and give you their name and number. And you'll keep that and contact us when it's time to start mailing and
Yep.
hammering.
I have
Okay.
a box of volunteer goodies down here. I'll leave them somewhere, and you can grab them if you're interested on the way out of how to volunteer. And so our motto in Habitat is we take the ugliest house on the block and make it the best. That's why I included those photos there. That rest of the Terpenning is a nice block, but it's that one house that's kind of an eyesore. So 12 months from now, it's not going to be. It's going to be the best house on the block.
Uh-oh, the other house is going to want help.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. Do you take volunteers at 18 or 21, or what's the age?
Depending on what they're interested in. I mean, they can come over and rake the leaves at 14, but power tools it's generally 18. 16, they can come and paint, do drywall work and sanders, but you put a saw in their hand, then they've got to be 18.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we take students. That's our best source of volunteers here, as the college students, but they can come out of high school. We're starting a program with Kellogg Community College that in the Battle Creek Central. Battle Creek Central will push kids into a skilled trade, and then as part of that, they will work with Habitat to develop those skills while they're in high school.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your time.
Next item, Kids and Stuff Museum, their auction, annual cherry auction is coming up this weekend on the 12th. Is Mrs. Dean here, or her representative? Okay. Move on to the next item, which is a proclamation recognizing October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. This is a proclamation recognizing October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas breast cancer is the second most commonly diagnosed form of cancer for women in the United States, expected to be detected in 268,000 American women in 2019. And whereas breast cancer remains the second leading cause of cancer death among American women, it is projected that it will claim 41,960 women in the United States in 2019. And whereas, although men are not as susceptible to developing this form of cancer as women, 2,670 men are expected to be diagnosed with breast cancer this year. While survival rates for men and women with breast cancer are similar at parallel stages, men report symptoms less frequently and are therefore at a greater risk of developing an advanced case of breast cancer before detection. And whereas death rates from breast cancer have been declining, and this change is believed to be the result of earlier detection and improved treatment. And whereas mammography and x-ray of the breast is recognized as the single most effective method of detecting breast changes that may be cancer long before physical symptoms can be seen or felt. And whereas researchers, scientists, numerous nonprofit organizations, and breast cancer survivors are dedicated to discovering the cure for breast cancer, during the month of October, we acknowledge the extraordinary commitment and effort invested in this cause and support those who are working towards a cure. And whereas we recognize the breast cancer survivors among us and honor their faith and courage, over 2.5 million American breast cancer survivors today give us a hope of a better future for those affected by breast cancer. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Dave Atchison, Mayor of the City of Albion, do hereby proclaim October 2019 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and encourage all Americans to learn about the facts about breast cancer, invest in a healthy future by exercising regularly, maintaining a healthy diet, and limiting alcohol use, and obtain regular breast cancer screenings. And witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal to be affixed for the seal of Albion on the 7th day of October in the year 2019. Next item is a proclamation recognizing Mental Illness Awareness Week. Whereas mental health is part of overall health, and whereas 1 in 5 adults experiences a mental health problem in any given year, and whereas approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illness begins by the age of 14 and 3/4 by age 24, and whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause among young adults, and 90% of people who die by suicide have an underlying mental illness, And whereas long delays, sometimes decades, often occur between the time symptoms first appear and when the individuals get help, and whereas early identification and treatment can make a difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery, and whereas it is important to maintain mental health and learn the symptoms of mental illness in order to get help when it is needed, and whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that for too long has surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help, and whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Dave Atchison, Mayor of the City of Albion, do hereby proclaim October 7th through October 13th, 2019 as Mental Illness Awareness Week in Albion, to shine a light on mental illness and fight stigma, provide support, educate the public, and advocate for equal care. The witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed. Okay. And lastly, National Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the City of Albion is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Albion, and whereas the U.S. Fire Departments responded to 365,500 home fires in 2015, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and whereas U.S. home fires resulted in 2,560 civilian deaths, representing the majority, 78% of all U.S. fire deaths, and whereas newer homes are built with lightweight materials that burn faster than older home constructions, and whereas many of today's products and furnishings produce toxic gases and smoke when burned, making it impossible to see and breathe within moments, and whereas these conditions contribute to a smaller window of time for people to escape a home fire safely, and with people giving as little as 1 to 2 minutes to escape from the time the smoke alarm sounds, and whereas a home escape plan provides the skill set and know-how to quickly and safely escape a fire situation and should be developed by all members of household, and whereas Albion's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, and whereas the 2019 Fire Prevention Week theme, Not Every Hero Wears a Cape, Plan and Practice Your Escape, effectively serves to educate the public about the vital importance of developing a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practicing it twice a year. Now therefore, I, Dave Atchison, Mayor of the City of Albion, do hereby proclaim October 6th to the 12th as Fire Prevention Week throughout the Albion community. I urge all the people of the City of Albion to develop a home fire escape plan with all members of the household, practicing it twice a year, and to participate in the many public safety activities and efforts of Albion's fire and emergency services during Fire Prevention Week 2019. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the official seal of Albion, Michigan on this 7th day of October. Okay. Next item is public hearing on the proposed zoning ordinance update. So, opportunity for the public to make comments. Okay. Seeing no public comments, may I have a motion to approve the proposed zoning ordinance update? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, the public hearing is now open. So, are there any public comments?
John can come and bring us up to date.
This is in relation to the updated ordinance, zoning ordinance. Mr. Tracy, would you kind of give us an overview of all the great changes?
John Tracy, Director of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. The current zoning that we have in place basically is from 1984 with a number of amendments over the years, but had never actually been rewritten. Attempts have been made several times, and in this past year and a half, the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission Subcommittee have done a great job in carrying through to get us a zoning ordinance that has pretty much been totally rewritten. Current ordinance has a total of 19 districts. 14 of them are actually the primary districts and 5 sub-districts, comprised of residential, commercial, downtown district, outlying districts and such. That has been brought down under the proposed current ordinance to 8. 2 residential districts, a mixed-use district, downtown district, commercial district out by the highway, college district, and M1, light industrial, and M2, heavy industrial. Over the years, the previous ordinance has been pretty cumbersome, and in many cases, a hardship to many individuals would be the commercial or residential because of the size lots that were originally plotted, and then with the zoning requirements for setbacks, both front, side, and rear, and including some of the areas that were zoned for industrial that had housing on them yet, and were basically lots that were too narrow, that were deep but too narrow to actually build much on it unless you bought up a number of properties. So a lot of thoughts gone into this process by the Planning Commission, subcommittee, and the staff. You have 2 maps in front of you. The one is the current, where you'll see there's 19, actually a total of 19 districts. Looks like quite a menagerie of various colors and letters on it. And the other is with the proposed zoning map, which you'll see has basically the industrial park area where you have M1, light industrial, and M2. 2 of the other zone areas were eliminated basically because of restraints on what could be built in the industrial park. A good part of the city has what's called R2 now rather than R2 and R3, primarily because of the number of housing units in those areas that used to be R1 or R2 that have 2 or 3 or multiple unit rentals and housing developments in them, which basically have come about over the years, both prior to the 84 and after that had been allowed to sneak in there. R1 for single family will primarily stay pretty close to what it was, other than it will not be R1A, B, or C. Differences being A, B, and C had different minimum requirements for the size of the house, the width of the property. The one was up to 100, minimum 100 square or 100 feet across the front, which there are not very many parcels in the city that even come close to that. So that's been reduced down to 60-foot frontage, and the overall size of the house minimum will be 1,000 square foot instead of several different square footage requirements. The mixed use is going into a number of areas that were previously either B1 commercial and or section of M1 that was on Austin Ave on the on the north side of Austin. This is where we had a lot of hardship with homeowners that could not get insurance or mortgages without paying a premium on them, because if anything were to happen to them, they would have not been able to be rebuilt if it exceeded 51% of the current cost. The mixed use is also being carried down Austin Ave and Eaton Street from Eaton Street out by the commercial district down to the downtown, so it's more of a even flow coming through there, and there's a number of properties where buildings have been demolished, and the chance of plain residentials going back into that area are very slim because of property size and or access to roads. So that has also been taken into consideration by the Planning Commission and has been changed to mixed use. So it's really brought things down and into what's used today, not what was out there in 1984. Things have changed. Buildings, both residential and commercial and uses have changed dramatically. it is much more open and liberal than the current zoning ordinance. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Okay. Are there any public comment? Anybody from the public wish to comment on this? Okay. Thank you. Public hearing is closed. May I have a motion to approve the zoning ordinance update?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Thank you. Discussion? Oh, Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. I did have a question, Mr. Tracy. It's probably gonna have to answer this. The opportunity zone in the city, where, we've never been shown that area, and I'm wondering if you can show us on the map the area for the opportunity zone? Wherever it is, I heard it was, I hate hearsay, that's why I'm asking.
Well, basically, what is happening is it's really open up part of that in a whole, in the city. This, of course, is the whole map.
I'm sorry.
All right. Primarily, what has happened with the zoning is, there moves along. You're gonna have a lot of areas under here where your Kelvin kind of net bank is looking at, doing projects on the, west side of the street up through there. Different mixed use, the area down in between, the East Street, down to Superior Street, has been changed to mixed use, which will open up a large area for both commercial, residential building.
So this is the designated area.
You have a number of what would be, I don't have a specific on it, people talk about.
Okay.
But it's been, the whole area's been opened up for various types of building, anywhere commercial and residential. So, depending on who you talk to,
Right.
it's on that.
Okay, that's what it's on.
Okay?
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. So where could we get clear, accurate answers?
Actually, I can provide you with a copy of the approved boundaries for the Opportunity Zone.
Okay,
It just so happens that about a month ago, I was curious about that very same thing, and I pulled up the map, so I can get you a copy of
I
that.
appreciate that, thank you.
It covers most of the actual downtown area, and I think a section of the southwest portion of the community. But I will get you a copy of the map.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, okay, would you please call the roll? Motion has been made and seconded to approve the proposed zoning ordinance update.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed, Brown,
Yes,
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Next on the agenda is the public comments section for agenda items. If members of the public would like to make a comment on agenda items.
try not to take all the furniture. My name is Stacy Stewart, and I live at 205 West Oak Street. I'm making a comment in regard to agenda item H, which says you're speaking in regard to the study session for the city manager goals and priorities. And I just wanted to bring to your attention or request to make the sidewalk project that has been kind of out there for some time a priority in as you move forward. It is my knowledge that it is my understanding that there was a sidewalk assessment. There's roughly $400,000 in the account. And last spring, I worked with Emily Smith, who was a VISTA, through the VISTA program. And she created a GIS, basically a survey database where we went around and utilized our phone in quite a neat application where you could take a picture of the location that had a bad sidewalk area, and we created, a database until it felt like there was no other resources and time behind it, so we just stopped. So I think there are probably, 50 or 60. We actually had a community group, attempting to get a community group together, walking around and using their cell phones to pinpoint bad areas, and it just kind of fell through the cracks. It's my observation that roughly 70% of the bad sidewalks can be ground down, and that can probably be utilized local parks and recs individuals. I don't know what contracts or anything like that require, but most of them are from tree roots that are pushing the sidewalks up, and the other 30% are broken or missing. And they had talked in the spring in regard to putting out an RFP for a request for pricing in regard to fixing them, but it really looked like probably 70% of them could be handled in-house if the Parks and Recs were capable of doing that. And then, the RFP potentially get most of the sidewalks fixed in the summer. Just a request. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comments this evening on agenda items? Seeing no further public comments. Next item is approval of the consent calendars. On the consent calendar is approval of regular session minutes for September 16th, 2019. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's approved. Okay, items for individual discussion. First item is request approval of Resolution 2019-31, a resolution to approve authorized signatures for the MERS contract and service credit purchase approvals. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. City Attorney Harkness, would you give us an overview, please?
Sure. So this is something that hasn't been done in a while, but with the modifications that we're making to the MERS plan, MERS is requiring that we update the authorized signatories for, as we've indicated in the resolution, documents that come to us from the MERS plan when employees want to make service credit purchases, meaning, if an employee, for example, wants to retire early and wants to buy some time in order to do that, this authorizes certain signatories to do something like that. For example, we've designated the city manager, the finance director, and the city clerk as the authorized signatories for that.
Are there any questions by council? Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. I'm just curious when the last time the signatures have been updated, because we've had some turnover.
I can't give you an exact date. My understanding in speaking with the finance director that it has been quite some time.
Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor of approving Resolution 2019-31 to approve authorized signatories for the MERS contracts?
I'm going to ask for a roll call for the resolution.
Okay. All right. Mr. Miggle, would you read the roll, please?
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Next item, item B, request approval of Resolution 2019-32, a resolution to approve an amendment to the MERS Defined Contribution Plan Adoption Agreement. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay. City Attorney Harkis, please.
Absolutely. So as the council's aware, when we decided to hire our new city manager, as part of our manager's contract, we negotiated for him to participate in a different retirement vehicle through the ICMA. Currently, under the MERS plan, all employees are required, including the city manager, are required to participate, including the department heads and the manager. In speaking with MERS, we can modify that, which we checked on while we were doing the contract negotiations. What that requires, though, is that we re-adopt the agreement to specifically exclude the city manager position from the MERS program. So what this does is this re-adopts the exact agreement that we have in place, just with the modification that the city manager position is now exempted from that.
Are there any discussions, questions, or discussion by council? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Mingo, would you read the roll?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Next item is discussion of repair or replacement of the drinking fountain at Holland Park. Ms. Reed, would you like to?
Yes. Really put all of this in together, but I'll start with the drinking fountain. There are some things at Holland Park that needs to be taken care of, and in the past, we had a Holland Park committee that got together and decided what needed to be done. We approved it with Mr. Logan, which was the director at that time, and we got it done. The drinking fountain at Holland Park is not sufficient, and I really think that we need another one, because I'm out there working and I'm watching kids drink water, and they're putting their mouth all over it because the water does not come up high enough to where you can put your head down, drink the water that's up. It's all down, it's lower down around the thing that comes out like this. And it's been fixed before and different things done, but you really, that really needs to be changed. Now, I have raised money for many, many things, but I have not raised money for a drinking fountain. And it seems as though, and I don't have it in my budget now because we're doing a pavilion, that the city could afford to put in a drinking fountain. Needs to be one like it is downtown. Those are nice, the water comes up good and high and everything, but I don't think any children should have to put their mouth down all over the thing in order to get a drink of water.
Okay. Comments by other council members? City Manager, did you want to comment on this?
Your Honor, just that I had the opportunity and the pleasure to meet with Councilor Reed out at Holland Park. We took a look at the facilities, not only for this issue, but for the other issues that are coming up on this agenda. And when I looked at the water fountain out there, I couldn't figure out how to actually turn it on. The button's missing off it or something, but, so it is an old water fountain. I do agree that it needs to be replaced. My understanding, there were comments that were made in a memo from our interim public services director that it may be just a valve issue. But my understanding from talking to Councilor Reed is that that has been replaced a few times and it has not taken care of the problem for the long term. So we do need to look at this further, and I am supportive of moving ahead with looking into this project.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions. Since you're bringing this up for the city to cover, have we checked the drinking fountains in all the rest of the parks? Because if we're gonna replace them, we might as well try to do it all. And then I wanted to know, I don't know who can answer this, maybe Mr. Phillips, but does it make sense to replace those now going into winter, or does it matter?
I would not, I would not,
Councilman
I
Murray.
would not mind waiting until spring. I just know that we do not need another year
Right.
of having to do that. And if I may say, we have worked on this park for 4 years now, and we have put over $200,000 in it. It's shaping up really nice. I wanted to get it to a point to where we can do a dedication, because the longer we work out there in that park, and it's being used, and so you don't want to dedicate it after you built it and the kids have torn it up, and you go back to dedicate it then. No, while it's still basically fresh and like it should be, like you want it to be, I would like to get that dedication done next year, where we can invite that family in and do the dedication. That's not to say that you can't add other things if you wish to, but the main things, after we get the pavilion put in, those will be the main things. We put in a children's section. I provided each council member with everything that's been done out there. Okay, we did the children's section, then we went to the children's walking area. We've got a little bit to do, and that'll be done next spring on that. Then we went to History Hill, to the senior section, to the teen section. The last thing that we really need to put in, we got the bathrooms done, and the courts, what do you call it, asphalt. So the last thing that really needs to be done there is a large pavilion put in, because people have been requesting a large pavilion. You can't, you can only get 6 tables under that little one. And if you're gonna have a family reunion or something like they've been having out there and bringing their own tables in, I don't think that should have to be done. And so therefore, that's the last thing that really needs to be done there. We have the money to do it. We have the money to buy the cement. We just don't have the people to put it up right now. I did check with the group that did the children's section from Naperville, Illinois, is planning on doing another volunteer section. And so they had called and got in touch with Mr. Patrick Keene as to if there was something that could be done in Albion. He did talk with me. I did tell him, please tell them yes. We'd be glad to have them come and do it. But we will not know until after the 9th of January, because that's when their church will make the selection as to who they're going to, what city they're going to work in for their next project. And if they work in here, it would be in the 2nd week of June, which would be fantastic. And so that's where we're at right now. I just know that I would like, if at all possible, to get this park, that pavilion in this year, have the dedication, so that we don't have to do a whole lot of fixing up
Let's wrap up the discussion on the drinking fountain, and then we've got 2 more items on, then we'll come back to
Okay.
the pavilion and the irrigation. Councilmember
I had a
Winter.
question about, so there's been a lot of improvements done to Holland Park over the last 4 years. Similar to Victory when they put in their new kids space, has there been a fund established at the Community Foundation to offset the cost of maintenance over time? Or are we just building and kind of relying on the city to continue to cover the cost of maintenance?
To the best of my knowledge, there has been no fund established, but we certainly can ask the city manager to find out if there has been.
I can check into that for you. I think absent a commitment, we have to assume that we are taking on the permanent perpetual costs of any new improvements we make. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because I noted that in my background briefs, and it is something that we do need to be thinking about as we approve new projects, that there are ongoing commitments that we make to these improvements.
I was thinking Councilwoman Reed would know the answer, because she's in the center of raising money, so.
I have
As far as I know about the workout machines at Highland Park, the company has always, because we've had to go back to them for some parts that broke, and they replaced them, no problem.
But no specific fund has been put together for the ongoing care, is what you're saying?
If you what?
You haven't raised any money for ongoing care of the park?
No.
Just the building projects? Okay,
No.
thanks.
Councilwoman Lawler, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I can see this project, and I would support it if we looked at all the park water fountains, if it was possible.
I think when we talk about parks, we need to talk about parks and green space. All parks are the 18 parks that are listed are not all parks. Most of them are green space. I guess when I think about a park, I think about something that has something in it that's usable by the community, like children or adults. You know, you've got picnic tables, or you've got play objects or things like that. To me, that's a park. Just to have a green spot that's kept cut and a picnic table, to me, is green space.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. So I just wanted to maybe be clear on what I was saying earlier about the drinking fountains. If we're gonna look at replacing all fountains in parks where children are out there and teens and, I mean, everybody, the public is utilizing a drinking fountain in a city space, that I'm asking that we look to see which ones need to be replaced. I think this is a perfect time to do that because we're entering budget season. So we're gonna budget for next year, but we know that's something we wanna do. Highland Park is a great start, but my suggestion is just let's see how much it is to replace all water fountains and systems in Albion spaces.
Or at least assess all of the water fountains, if some are in good condition and work functionally fine. And as Councilwoman Brown noted, we're coming up on the budget, and so if you would make a note of that, city manager, to address that. Okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on drinking fountains? Okay. Next item is installation of Holland Park landscaping irrigation utilizing city funding.
Okay. Everything else that's been put in Highland Park has not been funded by the city. Those have been funded by grants that I researched, got people to write, and received the money for. The only thing that I am asking from the city is the drinking fountains and the irrigation. Now, History Hill, when we started developing the park, the committee that I was working with, I asked that we put in something about history there. I just feel that there should be a learning situation with everything, and with that place, there is a learning situation from how it even started, you know, and the history there. So we talked about it, and we decided, because I had Wes Dick, who was a professor at the college, a history professor, Bob Walls, a history professor, Mrs. Dick, and there was several other people, including Mrs. Mitchell, that was on that committee, and we thought that would be something that would let not only the community know about what went on in that area, but it will also be good for the history of the kids. Mr. Dick always, Professor Dick starts his class out there every year, his history class. They start out there in History Hill, and then, you know, go on from there, because that is where a lot of where Albion started, when way back in the 1800s, whenever it first got started. And so that is very educational. Now, we put the kiosks out around there, and if you haven't been out there, please go. And there's a website on there where you can go on that website, and there's 23 people who've been interviewed, and they'll come up on your phone and they'll tell you all about the history of that area. They either went to the school, lived in the area, and so around that hill we put flowers, we put benches, because there were people who said that they just wanted to come and sit. People that went to the school, now, they're old folks now, like me, and, don't laugh. But they just want to come, sit, and reminisce, and so that's what we did. We put benches out there so that they could come, sit, reminisce. And then the hill, we covered with flowers. Started out with $400 worth of flowers, but because flowers need water, a lot of the flowers die. So I personally, out of my own money, put $200 more of flowers in there. And every year, they die because they get no water. So then I decided to go buy these hoses. So we went and bought hoses and hauled the hoses out to the hills to water the flowers so that they would continue to live. I am sorry, I'm 73 years old. I can no longer drag hoses. I dislocated an elbow. I can no longer drag hoses. So therefore, we have got to find a way to keep those flowers watered on History Hill. They're beautiful. The rose bushes bloom out, all the other bushes and flowers bloom out, and it makes the hill beautiful. But I can't do that anymore. And so I decided to call a firm who does irrigation systems, and called Kent, and we went out, we met with them, $3,700 to have an irrigation system ran to both sides of the hills that will run its own self, will be put in the building, and it will turn itself on and off. No, I did not raise money to fix it later on, because that is not a Lynn Reed's park. It's been said many times, oh, that's Lynn Reed's park. No, I have a park. It's at my house, 318 Chestnut Street. I have a park there. I have a whole great big area that's got a 7-foot swing set, 2 trampolines, a zip line, and a bounce house. And my grandkids come there and they have a ball. So that is not my park. That is an Albion City park. And Albion City should take some responsibility to continue to let it look like a beautiful park. That's it.
Comments by council. Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have the manpower to upkeep this water system? Because I'm looking at the memorandum from Director Interim Kent Phillips.
Mr. McCleary?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I think I heard what you said, but I want to make sure I understood what you said.
Do we
about
have
funding.
manpower to take care of this maintenance?
The maintenance of the plantings?
Of an irrigation system, if it was.
Right.
Of the irrigation system?
Yes, the irrigation system. I'm sitting here looking at.
It's going to be built, the working box
Point
is
of order.
going to be inside.
Let's let Mr. McCleary finish.
We would make sure that it's planned into our maintenance program if the council approves this project. Just like we would any other project that the council did approve for us to move forward. We would program it into our annual operations. But there, as I noted before, there is some additional cost every time we add a facility, an improvement. There is some additional maintenance and operation costs involved with that, and we should always be sensitive to that.
Councilmember Williamson.
Mr. McCleary, you're going to have a very long second week. You're getting lots of jobs tonight. I just have a question, because I am so supportive of, keeping our parks beautiful, putting, the new pavilion that Councilwoman Reed is raising money to build, and fixing these little water. I think we're talking about some small stuff here tonight that needs to be done. We all agree needs to be done. My question is, what is the comprehensive plan for park maintenance and upgrades? And we probably don't have one right now, and you've only been here a week, and it's been a little chaotic the past year, as everyone knows. But maybe we should be talking about this more in the context of what's going on bigger in the city parks overall, because I know that over at Victory, the band shell currently is not ADA accessible, and that space is not ADA accessible. And that space hosts thousands of people throughout the summer for time in the park for concerts and things like that. And so I would like to see something, I'm just adding to the conversation, I'm very supportive of keeping things beautiful at Holland Park, and I think that maybe this needs to come at the council at a higher level. I think we need to work at a higher level than flowers and water fountains. I think we need to think about what is it like overall across the city around everyone's neighborhood. And so that's just, I'm just going to add that to the conversation. Hopefully, we'll have a conversation about that. I'm sure we're all going to have a conversation with you about that. So I yield.
Other comments? I think just as one of the public speakers suggested and requested that the sidewalk project be built into the goals as we develop those during the work studies, I think an update to the comprehensive plan for maintaining our parks and improving our parks is something we certainly can consider when we put together goals. Okay. Any other comments? Councilwoman Reed.
Which I've already spoke with Mr. Phillips about that too, when it comes to the sidewalks around Holland Park, the trees that broke up the sidewalk. And that park is ADA accessible. In fact, a lot of the workout machines out there, you can roll your wheelchair right up to them and work out. But we had talked with the senior center because they've been working with us on this too, about having sidewalk around so that they can use it as a walking park for exercise. And you know, I would like people for that to be taken into consideration too, because our seniors are a valuable part of our community, and that gives them a safe place to walk. Many of them say they don't like to walk the trail back out through there because they don't know what's back there. So if they're walking right there in front of the senior center around that park, that still gives them an opportunity to exercise. There's a gentleman that lives across the street from the park who's been walking the children's walk, but he's somewhat handicapped, so that's good for him. People who aren't would be good if they could walk all the way around. So in the process of thinking about sidewalks, that would be something too that could be valuable to the park.
Any other comments by council? Okay. Next item is, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. Something popped in my head.
Sure.
I want to make sure. So these were all discussion items. We weren't asked to take any action tonight. So moving forward, I don't know if you're gonna bring these back or, like, we've asked the city manager, McCleary, to do some things, but we haven't, as a council, taken action to do anything. We've just had discussion. So I'm trying to figure out how do we not slip this through, how do we move forward?
Well, the general consensus seemed that we need to have an updated comprehensive plan for maintenance of the parks, assess all the water fountains, drinking fountains, and Mr. McCleary is going to take that on. And when we get the assessment back as far as the drinking fountain, then we're going to look at that, and then I would see there would be a vote by the council to determine what we're going to do. Councilwoman Reed.
I'd just like to say I hope this does not take too long, because when we met with about the pavilion, they gave us, I think it was close to an $8,000 cut in price. So if we don't get it this fall while that is going on, next year it will not be there. We'll end up paying more for it than what the $8,000 is, because every year they add on more. So in order to get it at that price, we're going to have to make some kind of decision pretty soon.
And the next item on the agenda is the discussion of the pavilion. So, any other comments or questions? And Councilman Brown, did I answer your question?
You did. I have a suggestion later on in the agenda. That's
Okay.
all.
All right. So discussion, addition of pavilion, the Holland Park Pavilion, utilizing grant funding that's been raised and received by Councilwoman Reed. So would you like to, anything further to say about the pavilion? my understanding is in looking at the information memorandum that city manager provided on these, it appears there's sufficient funding for what the estimated costs are. There are some questions, but whether or not we put a pavilion up, the city puts a pavilion up in Holland Park, is the topic of discussion. And my input would be, since you've raised the money and people have donated the money and we've gotten grants and it's targeted for that, it would be inappropriate for the city not to follow through on that.
And if on the 9th, Naperville decides to do it, that's good, because they bring in everything.
Any other comments by council?
So,
Councilman Spicer.
thank you. So, Councilwoman Reed, the pavilion is going in this year, October?
No, it's
Next
not
year.
going in until next year.
Okay, thank you.
But it needs to be purchased this year.
The irrigation system.
No, this is the pavilion.
Just for the pavilion.
Okay. Councilman Williamson.
Okay, so of course, I read the memorandum that we have in our packet about this. So I'm a bit confused by the discussion. So it sounds like it's already been decided who the person would be that's going to install the pavilion or company we're going to buy it from. I just need some clarity, because in the recommendation it says that we would bid this out entirely and then have it built by a professional team. Have we done that? I saw that there were like 3 separate bids in here. Was that done by the city? Was that done by Ms. Reed? Maybe we can have some
Myself
clarity.
and Kent, we met with this company that I looked at, Schaefer, well, not Schaefer, it's the Pavilion Company. We've dealt with them before, because they are part of Playworld. Playworld is the company that we got the children's part from. And so we've dealt with Playworld before, and their products are very, very good. Definitely.
Question I have for the city attorney is, if we have volunteers assemble the pavilion and install it, does the city have a higher liability in the event something happens, as opposed to if we hire and contract out the assembly of the pavilion?
The answer to your question off the top of my head would be yes, because a company that's coming in that has been hired by us is likely to have their own insurance covering their own employees, both liability and various tangential insurances that could apply, like, for example, if they're injured, workers' comp and things like that. If we're using volunteers, arguably the city could be liable.
So the topic of whether or not we install a pavilion in Holland Park, any comments by council? I mean, the money's raised. Okay. So, Councilwoman Clark.
Excuse me. So if we use the person that she's contacting, and because of liability, isn't there some type of warranty or guarantee of services that they would provide to you for a length of time for the actual structure?
Now, go ahead.
There was a 10-year warranty on that structure for paint, adherence, and everything else on it. The discussion that Councilmember Reed and I talked about was, right now steel prices are down, and it would behoove us with the money that's there to buy the structure and store it at one of the street department garages, and that's what we've talked about. I think the question before the council becomes, this is a public space. And being a public space, in order to put something like that on it, the council needs to approve the fact that yes, they do want to have a pavilion put on that parkway. Because a private individual can't go out and do that without council approving it. So I guess that kind of leads to 2 things with the pavilion. One is, is the council's agreement that we have a pavilion. And then two is, because of steel prices and because of the pricing that Councilmember Reed has, do we purchase that and set it in storage? And then as we are able to move forward with the contracting of the cement work, because that's, in talking with people about that, that's a pretty highly engineered piece of work that needs to be done. A 45 by 65 slab is huge. Drainage, everything has to line up. All of the piers for support of that have to line up. And we don't have the skill or tools to do that. So if you're going to bring in the cement contractors to set it based on prints and then have it available for volunteer or structural engineers or a company to come in and erect it, then that money can be raised down as well for that. Does that make sense?
Okay,
So that would mean additional money then?
It would probably mean, yeah, it's gonna, because the quote for the cement was like $8,300 for a 6-inch slab, 45 by 65. But I think in the grading and the pier placement, for the foundational pier placement and those types of things, need to be done by somebody who really truly has the insurance and understands what they're doing. Could we do it? Yeah, but we can't guarantee that it's going to be together in 5 years when the ice melts or the winter comes. So I would highly recommend that it be done that way by professional contractors that would be doing it.
So who built the last one
Which one is that, though?
up there now? Because that wasn't always there.
The Octagon? I don't know who did do that. I don't know if we had a company come in and do that or not. I can try to find out.
Councilman Spicer.
Thank you. So does the money include the slab, the grant funding?
Yes.
It includes the slab and the pavilion?
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying, Director Phillips, because Councilwoman Reed has these three things going, and she was kind of excited and all over the place with it. I didn't understand that we could purchase it and have it stored, because she kept saying.
Right, and
putting
that's
it there,
something
so
that I
I
wanted
wasn't
to add up.
understanding
Yeah,
that, so.
because
Thank
and
you.
right now, it's more the steel prices, it's the pricing that Councilmember Reed's been given. It's a 60-foot structure that, and we have a barn available. We actually have enough space to be able to bring it in. We have a telehandler to unload it from a truck, and that price included the shipping as well. So we can get it in and get it stored, and then make decisions from there too, if that seems to be the way that council wants to move.
So, did they give us a time
Did-
frame to purchase it, or will it change?
Seemed-
Yes, we have a time frame to purchase it.
I think it was like 30 days, a 30-day quote or a 30-day quote or a 45-day quote from time of quote.
What time is the quote? Do we have it in here?
It's been about 2 weeks, about 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, we talked to her. Yeah. So,
Okay, any other comments? So I would suggest we put it on the next council meeting to vote to make a determination to approve the installation of a pavilion, and I'll get with Councilwoman Reed and City Manager McCleary and the other questions that need to be the answers for, and that'll be on the next agenda. Okay. Next item is a discussion of the city ordinances concerning litter on city streets and parks. There's a copy of the ordinance in the packet. And get past the pavilion. So, hopefully all members of council have read it. My personal opinion is that it could be edited and made a little bit clearer. I'd like to, as we're making efforts to keep the city cleaned up, and it is looking better, and a lot of people are working on their homes and whatnot, was soliciting the ideas and input from council on what else we can do to help keep the litter off, convince people not to throw it on the street. And after reading the ordinance, there are provisions to remind property owners, business owners, that they are responsible to keep the areas cleaned up in front of their property, off of the sidewalks and whatnot. So I would, any comments or ideas by council? Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. So I have comments. As far as the litter, I know we have ordinance in place. I know code enforcement is like stretched super thin. My comment is that that's an area that we as a city really need to look at figuring out how to address code enforcement just period across the city. I mean, we can have perfect wording in place, but if the ordinance isn't being enforced, then it's really doing the residents in the city. Oh, good. So that's my comment.
Councilman Reed.
Well, the guy that cuts my grass swears that I'm an alcoholic, because where I live, they come from the store, they walk down the street, they're drinking their bottles and they're throwing them into my bushes. And so when he comes to do the bushes, and he's getting all the bottles out, and so I'm just wondering if, in certain areas, if there was a trash receptacle placed between the street and the sidewalk, if that would be helpful. I don't know.
Well,
But I just know people just don't take the bottles and cans home. They just pitch them wherever they use them.
I'm going to ask the city manager to comment during one of our meetings last week. We talked about this, and that kind of coincides with your input, which was more trash receptacles, so.
Yes. In my experience as a city manager, you have to make it convenient for people to want to take care of their trash. If it's convenient, you've got receptacles strategically placed throughout the downtown or throughout the community. People tend to use them. I don't think there is a natural tendency for people to just throw trash on the ground. But there is also a tendency for people to not want to go out of their way. So when the mayor and I were talking, I was saying maybe we need to look at where we need to identify locations where trash receptacles are needed. Identify those areas where we are experiencing problems right now, and then look at investing in some additional trash receptacles. Get on a comprehensive program where we're maintaining those receptacles. We can be as simple in what we do, or we can be very progressive. I don't know how many of you may have heard or seen of the Big Belly trash receptacles, but Big Belly is a company that provides municipal trash receptacles that are actually Wi-Fi enabled, and they will tell you when they are full. They also compact the trash so it frees up space in the receptacles so you can get more trash into them. And they serve as Wi-Fi hotspots for people who want to connect and be able to use it, if it's downtown, and make sure downtown Wi-Fi accessible to people who are shopping and dining downtown. So it depends on what we would want to invest in, but we can keep it simple, but we have to make it readily accessible for people. And I would recommend, because we went through this in Ypsilanti, where we identified strategic locations in both of our downtowns, Depot Town and Historic Downtown, where we needed those receptacles, and started to come up with a plan to undertake that. Although we were going with Big Belly, we decided to think big and invest in the receptacles. At the same time, Big Belly will provide you with the trash receptacles and also recycling receptacles, and they're connected. So we can also encourage people to recycle materials at the same time. the receptacles also have inserts available for them, so we could, if businesses wanted to advertise on the receptacles, you can put advertising placards on all four sides of each receptacle and earn some revenue back that will help to pay for them. So these are just some of the ideas that we can look at to try to do something comprehensive to address what issues we may have.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we're on the discussion of trash, these big closed bins that's being used for garbage, especially out by the highway, there's a couch out there now. Last week or a couple weeks ago, there were tires out there. So how is the city able to regulate where these big bins go, and is anyone monitoring these big bins that actually clothes go in, but it's being used for other stuff?
There are communities that have required some type of permit before they've allowed those types of receptacles to be installed. So if you're talking about clothing bins.
It's a big clothing bin,
Yes,
but they're using
or shoe
going in
bin, some of
the
them
air.
are shoe bins. So some communities have required a permit before they've allowed businesses to place them in their parking lots, or nonprofit organizations to place them on their property, so that they could better monitor them. Some communities have adopted ordinances that limit the amount of time that they can be placed in any one location. So yes, communities have tried to address ways to control those.
We need to do that.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. Just the area your Councilmember Lawler is speaking of, I believe, is the bowling alley?
Out there by the highway, by Taco Bell, Burger King.
Oh, I see it. There's a couch, okay, thank you. I haven't seen it.
Any other comments from the council? Okay. Next item is discussion of city ordinances, complaints associated with dogs and feral cats. Typical complaints, and I did forward one to the city manager and the head of public safety and code enforcement. Yes, Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you, I'm sorry to go back. I'm unclear on, the litter was a discussion item, so we haven't taken any action, we had a good discussion, I think, but there's no clear, this is what.
One input was more trash receptacles, which the city manager echoed, and he's going to look at that.
So I'm just gonna, okay, I understand inputs and stuff, I totally get it, and discussion is always good, but it takes a council vote, council action to make something policy or to make something a directive, is all I'm saying. So we can have discussion and we can give input, but until council takes action to vote to do something specific, it's not, you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so I'm just saying the discussion is great, but there's no clear cut next step. That's my input, so
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so the ordinance and complaints associated with dogs. Okay, so bringing that to your attention there, city manager and the council, that we are getting more complaints. I'm getting more complaints of barking dogs, dogs running loose. It's an ongoing problem with people not cleaning up after their dogs, and then some issues with feral cats. Any other of the council members getting similar complaints from your constituents? Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. So I did have an issue with a resident having about 6 or 7 pit bulls in the yard, and they kept breaking loose, and one morning a child got bit on the way to a bus stop. So I'm trying to remember, because it's been over a year, the process, I reported it, but there was somebody in the county that had to come over and deal with that. So could we talk about the process of, like, once we get complaints and we contact City Hall, there's actually somebody in the county that comes over to deal with the animals. And then I wanted to ask too, the feral cats, are the complaints outside of the, what's your building? Union Steel
Yes.
building? Or is it in just, is it?
No, it's outside of Union Steel
It's
Building.
outside of Union Steel now, okay. Okay. So, yeah, Charlie, can you speak, I don't know if you know.
So, I think what you're asking is, so the city doesn't have a designated animal control officer.
Right.
That's why when, for lack of better phrasing, when we need animal control, we have to call the county. I will say that when there are animal attacks, like a pit bull biting somebody, it's very frequent that, the way our ordinances are set up, that the chief can declare, for example, the dog to be a vicious animal and impound it for a certain period of time until, on one or two occasions, we've actually had to get an order for the court for destruction of the animal because they have attacked individuals. So there is a process for that. It's usually seizure of the animal, notice to the owner that it's going to be under quarantine, and then if it's declared vicious, then we proceed with filing an action with the district court for destruction of the animal, and then it's a formal court hearing to see if the animal is going to be found vicious and destroyed or returned to the owner. On the flip side of the coin, we can also call the county, have their animal control officer come up if they're available, which is a more difficult thing, but it can also be dealt that way through the county prosecutor.
Councilwoman Brown. Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. A lot of, one of the problems is that when someone calls to report, to make a complaint of a barking dog or a loose cat or a loose dog, and calls and an officer comes out, by the time the officer gets there, that issue is no more. The dog is either gone or people have taken it in the house and it's not barking. So I don't know how that can be addressed. You may call, and by the time someone gets here, that what you called about is not happening, is what I found. I had several people call about me over the last 6 months, and a lady was walking her grandchild to the bus stop and a dog was running loose. Well, she quickly ran home with her granddaughter, got in the car and drove her back. She called me, and then I think I spoke with someone in City Hall, and they suggested she call the police. Well, she did, but by the time they got to the area that she directed them to, the dog was no longer there, visible. So a lot of times the problem is that what's happening when they make the phone call isn't happening when the police or whomever else, animal control, gets there. So I don't know how we address this issue.
City Attorney Harkness.
So, Councilman Spicer, what I can offer to you is actually we've had this scenario come up in some of the other municipalities that I represent, and you're right, it's a tough thing because sometimes if you don't catch them in the act, it's hard to enforce it. The way that I've typically approached it, and the way that our ordinance is drafted, is very similar to a lot of other municipalities. Is if it's something that's occurring more than once, usually what I'll recommend to either the code enforcement or to the public safety departments is that they document it, and then say for example, if it's the third call that this has been a persistent howling or barking dog, that we then issue a civil infraction ticket pursuant to our ordinance. That at that point, even though the officer hasn't observed it, what they can do is they can do a report, request permission from the city attorney to issue a ticket, and then we can issue a ticket based on the fact that it's clearly a pattern of ongoing consistent behavior, and that'll make it much easier to establish in court if we have to have a hearing on the civil infraction.
Thank you.
Other comments by council? Okay. Next item, request approval to set study session date for city manager goals and priorities. And city manager included, I believe, a form, proposed form in here, if I can find it. Yep, I found it. No, it's not the right one. Okay. All right. So it looks as though you're requesting 3 separate study sessions?
Well, at least one, and if you feel that more than one is necessary to get through it, then you can schedule 2 or more. But at least one session where we have the opportunity to sit down, talk together about what your expectations are for me as your new city manager over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. What goals and priorities you have that you would like to see accomplished during that time period, with performance measurements so that I can have some clear direction on what those expectations are and what benchmarks I need to meet to know that I'm moving along. Just to be able to sit down and have that conversation with each other so that there's clear direction for me going forward over the next year.
Any council person have a recommended date? If not, we'll all probably look at our, Councilwoman Williamson.
Maybe mine isn't a recommendation for a specific date, but maybe if we attach it to a regularly scheduled council meeting for maybe the hour before. And if we have to have more than one, we can, because then we're already dedicating that evening to council. And feel free to not take that recommendation.
Okay.
But we're already here on Monday night. It makes for a long evening.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. So I'm not totally opposed to Councilmember suggestion, but it makes for a long day when you work and then drive into town and then you're like, it's a long day. But I've done it before. I'm willing to do it. But I think for the purpose of, you know, we've done goals for us, so I think we have a good starting point. But for the sake of communication, two-way, really getting a full understanding, I think that this is something I think we should set up sooner rather than later. I'm open to a day next week, because it's an off regular meeting week, so I would say I would like to give this more than just an hour, but no more than 2. But I want to have ample time to really sit down and hammer some things out. So I'm suggesting next week.
Next Thursday.
Monday the 14th?
Okay.
Monday the 14th.
Thursday.
Great.
That's fine.
Monday the 14th, just as a reminder, is Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't believe it's a state holiday in this state, though, is it?
I have to work.
Okay.
I have a meeting myself.
All right. So one idea would be to do it on Monday the 14th, and then I thought I heard somebody say Thursday. Okay.
Monday the what?
14th?
Monday is the 12th. And the 19th or the 26th.
Monday's the 14th.
Oh, I'm at 20.
No, we don't want to wait till 2023. Okay.
That's good.
I can make a Monday night work.
Wow.
Councilman Brown.
Thank you. So if we do Monday the 14th, I'm asking that we start before 7.
6.
Okay, is there any council person that schedule does not support Monday the 14th beginning at 6 p.m.? Okay.
Does that work for
Yes, thank you.
you? Might be out of town.
Okay. Oops. Next item is request,
Since that was an approval, you need a motion and a second and a vote.
I move that we set the work session for
thank you.
the manager goals and priorities for October 14th, beginning at 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item is request approval of $10,152.19 to Monarch Welding and Engineering for sludge heating boiler repair at the wastewater treatment plant. May I have a motion
So move.
and support?
Support.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, would you give us a quick explanation?
The sludge boiler heater, in order to treat our sludge properly at the wastewater treatment plant, it needs to maintain a temperature of 96 degrees. First part of July, we found that there was sludge in the boiler bath. That's where the water would be heated, and that should be just clean water. So the tubing that goes through there to allow the sludge to collect the heat, go back into our digestion system, obviously had just basically rotted out. So it had to be replaced. It's an integral part of the treatment of that sludge. In order to field apply it, we have to have it stabilized, and that's part of the stabilization process. That leak was found in the first part of July. Then we called people in to fix it, and this was just an oversight of not getting it to council. Although it is an emergency repair and it is a budgeted line item for pump maintenance and repair, it's still over that $5,000 limit. So we're just coming back and asking for that approval.
Any comments by council?
I'm sorry, if I could add something for clarity for the council. By the way, Tom Mead, Finance Director. This particular type of repair, because it prolonged the life of the boiler, adding extra years of service, we can actually capitalize that, which means it won't actually be an expense item. It will go on the balance sheet as an asset to prolong the life of that, and it'll be depreciated. So when you vote on this, just keep in mind it's not going to come off the bottom line or cause additional expenses for the 19 budget in wastewater, because again, it'll go on the balance sheet, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. Anything you want to add, City Manager?
No, you're right.
Okay. All right. If there's no further comments, Mr. Ming, would you read the roll, please?
Councilmember Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item, request approval to waive attorney-client privilege and release to the public the full investigation report of the second independent investigation of the November 2018 incident. May I have a motion? Okay, I move that we approve and waive attorney-client privilege and to release the report to the public.
I'm not sure that you can make the motion. for
Why
that.
not?
I don't think the chair is permitted to make that motion.
Is that the one?
Mayor,
Councilwoman Spicer.
I move that we waive attorney-client privilege and release to the public the full investigative report of the November 2018 incident.
Thank you. Is there support?
Support.
Okay. Is there discussion? Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. I'd like to, a friendly amendment. I have an email from the investigator revolving, it's answering a question that I asked about the investigation that I'd like to have council waive privilege on and release that along with the report. Attorney Harkness was copied on that email exchange as well.
Councilman Williamson.
Unless I missed something, was there a legal opinion about doing this in the packet, or did we contact the city attorney to talk about the possible consequences for the release of this document and what that means going
Yep,
forward.
I spoke with the city attorney. City Attorney Harris.
So, let me say as a preliminary thing, I think waiving attorney-client privilege should never be taken lightly. It's a pretty serious thing. It's supposed to be done sparingly, if done at all. I spoke with the mayor about this. My primary concern, aside from, well, one concern is I don't want this to become a slippery slope where attorney-client privilege is waived as a matter of routine. I don't think that that's going to be the case, but I mean, that's definitely a concern that I have. Another concern that I had, that I expressed to the mayor was what impact, if any, the release of this information would have with the pending litigation that we have regarding the incident that was investigated. I will inform council, I did speak with our insurance counsel at Plunk & Cooney regarding that very issue to say, okay, I just want to hear from you because you're the one litigating this case. Is this going to impact in any way? He did express to me he does not expect it to impact his case. So that being said, I no longer have that concern based on his representations to me. Obviously, given that the tangentially related matters regarding the employee that was involved are no longer pending, so I don't have that concern. The one concern that I expressed to council is that, again, attorney-client privilege is something not to be taken lightly. It should be waived only in the most extreme of circumstances, so take that for what it's worth.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you. I wanted to know if Attorney Harkness, had an opinion regarding the email that I am mentioning.
If it's the email that I'm recalling where you asked a supplemental question, it doesn't modify my opinion as it relates to the release of the information as a whole. I don't think it will. I don't think the nature of it exacerbates anything either way, one way or another. I think it's part and parcel of the whole thing. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Now, Councilmember Williamson.
I was just wondering who put this on the agenda, and maybe they can explain for what purpose we're doing it.
Okay, I put it on the agenda, and that's exactly what I'll do. So the investigation was completed. There was a report, which was part of the tasking. What was funded was to provide a comprehensive report. Each member of council received a copy of that report. There were conclusions, which this summary addresses. There also were recommendations, and there was a lot of other information in the report. Because there was such an interest by the community, they wanted it to be investigated, and I'm convinced they want to see the report. And I don't think they want to have a member of council say, everything was great, and here were the recommendations that we got. So if we don't release the report, my concern is that members of the community are going to be left with the question, well, if you're saying the results were everything was done properly, that all of the body camera footage related to the incident was turned over, just let us see the report. So it's communication and transparency to the community. We've all seen the report, and I think it is important that the community gets to see it. So that's why it's on there. As for the email, I don't think I've seen the email. I know every member of council has seen the full report. I'd be happy we could put that on the next agenda to bring up the same question. I wouldn't feel comfortable supporting release it unless I'd read it. So, other comments by council or city attorney? City Attorney Hargis.
What I can offer on the last issue is I was copied on it. It was just, the email is a question about whether or not a particular, I think it was an email about whether or not a particular question was asked by the investigator, and that was pretty much it.
Okay.
It spoke to the report submitted. I asked about the reports, the police report incident.
It was it was just a question about part of the investigation, is what it was, so it's an FYI.
Okay. So, other comments or questions by council? All right, so you,
So then will the email be released? as
Well,
well?
I have a motion. I made a motion as a friendly amendment to your motion to include the email.
Okay, so then am I to restate my motion with the friendly amendment, or how are we?
Or just,
Just needs to be.
I
Councilman
need a
Brown.
second, and then we'll vote on the amendment, and then, yeah, made motion. So, the motion that I made, I'll repeat again, is to, waive attorney-client privilege and release to the public the full investigation report of the November 2018 incident, along with the supplemental email.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded for approving the amended motion of releasing the full report and the supplemental email. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Would you read the roll, please?
Councilmember Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes?
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry?
We have to vote again, y'all. I think that was a vote to amend. Now we have to vote on the amendment.
Please read the roll.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay, next item is future agenda items. Councilwoman Clark.
So I would like to, as you all know, we did the survey for the grocery desert during the Festival of the Forks. That's why I wasn't in the parade, if you guys were wondering. I was handing out these things. And we will be tallying the results, and I would like to bring them to council at the next meeting.
Okay. City Attorney Hartness.
We need to make a small addendum to the manager's contract. I've already spoken to him about this, and he's in agreement. Just so the council's aware, as it relates to the provision regarding the PTO time, the current contract says that the annual unused PTO will be paid out on January 1. The amendment that needs to be made is just that it's paid out the first pay period of January. The reason being, obviously, City Hall is not open on January 1, and obviously payments would be made at a pay period. It's a very minute change, and actually the manager had already said he interpreted it to be the first pay period, but just for purposes of having the contract reflect what was intended, we just need to make that small amendment.
Okay. Other council members for future agenda items? Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you. Can we add a strategic plan for parks and some type of city ordinance or whatever we have to do for these closed pens? I mean, these, closed pens.
You need to go to sleep.
And so I understand the donation boxes. What about the comprehensive plan for parks?
We need to make one.
Or at least take action to approve one, nation of one.
Okay. Any other Councilwoman Reed?
The Highland Park
The pavilion?
Pavilion, and all the drinking fountain, the irrigation for that.
Councilwoman Brown.
You're asking for action on those
Yeah.
things, correct? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
somewhere there, I think I have my copy at home if I didn't loan it to someone. There's been, it was a parks plan that was set up in 2015 that ran from 2015 to 2020. Do you have that?
I have seen it and have seen references to it, but I don't know if I have a copy.
And that was, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Mayor. That was my question too. I thought we had a Parks and Recreation master plan in place until 2020. I will get a copy of that and I will send it to you electronically, so each of you have that.
Other future agenda items? Okay. Public comments. Persons addressing City Council, please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Proper decorum is required. Anyone wishing to make public comment this evening, come forward.
I'll wait till that starts. It's my full minute. Boy, that's big. Jay Loomis, 408 West Ash Street. Really only on behalf of the ASME Union and the city workers, welcome to the team, sir.
Thank you.
That was nice. Okay.
Levada Weeks, 917 Luther Drive. I just kind of want to reiterate what he said. I wanted to congratulate our city manager and welcome you very much. We look forward to having you on the team.
Thank you.
Any other public comments this evening? Okay.
It's going twice, right? Absolutely. Hold on. Come on now. Got a tough crowd tonight, huh? Yeah, exactly. Mr. Mayor, council members, City Manager McCleary, Clerk Domingo, residents of the City of Albion, and those watching this evening, good evening. Gary Tompkins, your County Commissioner. Great to be with you folks each and every month. I just want to take the opportunity, certainly, to welcome the new city manager. Certainly, hopefully, once everything gets settled down, I know it's kind of hectic. I'd love that opportunity to sit down with you and converse with you. I don't know if you've had an opportunity here, but I'm a pretty active person in the community as well, and certainly an advocate for the City of Albion. So whatever we can do to develop a good relationship and move forward in whatever projects you need, please let me know. So we'll get together at some point in time. Certainly welcome, officially, absolutely. Absolutely, and I just want to say, by the way, Ms. Reed, you look absolutely wonderful for 73 because I would have never guessed that, so just so you know. So, that was great. I thought that was great. I learned something every day. That was awesome. All right, first and foremost, let's get to it, and I'll be brief, or try to be brief. First of all, the EEE update, or the encephalitis spraying update. Many of you have heard this all over the place in terms of we had 4 areas in Calhoun County that did in fact get sprayed. Probably the closest one here would have been just south of Albion, down near the Jackson County line, down in my area. About a half mile to the county line that was actually sprayed. About 541,000 acres over the 14 counties has been sprayed so far. At this point in time, there's no more spraying to be had, certainly in Calhoun County. I know there are a number of people that did call in and opt out of the program, but there was no spraying done around the Albion area, or at least on the east side, other than one specific right in the corner near Jackson County. So again, I just wanted to give you an update in terms of that. The only thing I will say going forward, I think there's a lot of things that we did learn from this. I think there was a lot of people, you know how Facebook gets in terms of these multiple people reporting what the updates are, then they change 5 minutes from now. Hopefully going forward, the state who had been involved in this, we learned from this and maybe doing a little bit better job in terms of having one line of communication, in terms of having to get that out there and then all of a sudden pull it back, and then other people are saying that it's spraying that night and it's actually not spraying that night. So hopefully we get an opportunity to do so. I mean, the county, it was originally a county deal, but obviously it turned into a big state deal with 14 counties being involved. So just wanted to give you a quick update on that. All right, next on the item would be the county side impact for the 2020 budget. This is the state budget. As you know, many people know, with the legislature passed their budget, sent to the governor. Governor decided she wanted to do some things with it. And again, this is no indictment on anybody, but I think it's important to know some of the county side impact on some of those budget items that have been adjusted. The $27 million was taken from the PILT, which is the payments in lieu of taxes that counties rely upon to be compensated for public lands and not use taxes. that do not pay property taxes is going to have a significant impact, certainly on Calhoun County moving forward. So that's a big one. Couple on the Sheriff's Department side, $13.1 million for secondary road patrols. Calhoun County has applied for that grant and received it every year since 1978. That's going to impact Calhoun County in terms of secondary road patrols, which would be for our secondary and rural roads of about $160,000. $14.9 million to reimburse county jails for housing state inmates. This is going to have about a $440,000 impact, certainly at the Sheriff's Department. And if those, hopefully at some point we'll get together and hopefully try to work that whole situation out. But if that doesn't, we're probably looking at some potential layoffs at the county as relates to some of our people at the Sheriff's Office. So just stay tuned for that. And there's a couple others, $4 million for funding to counties for Child Care Fund, which covers Michigan's foster care system. Obviously very, very important here in Calhoun County as well. I know recently we've looked at it, and the money is starting to run a bit dry in that program to begin with. And that is a lifeline certainly for Calhoun County in terms of its foster care program. So hopefully we can, again, come to some mutual agreement on that. And then $4 million worth of grants meant for county service to veterans, which will certainly impact folks here in Albion as well as certainly my district in Calhoun County as well. And then finally, $2.7 million take from reimbursements for court-appointed guardians. Essentially what this all means, this is not an indictment on anybody. My only request would be going forward is everybody gets together, sit down, and let's try to figure out how we can rectify the situation for the benefit of all. Because as we all know, these cuts hurt somebody, and it'll impact us certainly on a local level as well. So just something to be aware of. I'm going to flip here real quick to go to something real positive. I like to switch it all up sometimes. Festival of the Forks, what a great event it was to have everybody out. Hope everybody liked my special guests that I had in my little float. My daughter dressed up as a inflatable dinosaur, so she was so happy to do that. It was about 130 degrees in the costume, so I owe her lots of something there. So, but it was great. I always like to do something a little different, so I thought that would be kind of fun to do it. The kids thought it was great, so that was positive. This past Thursday, October 3rd, I was in Washington, D.C. as I participated in the County Commissioners Leadership Day, which included commissioners from Michigan, Kentucky, and Ohio. There were over 80 county commissioners there. From Michigan, which we were the very largest delegation. There was probably about 10 from Kentucky and about 20 from Ohio. So we were by far the biggest delegation there. Basically, it was a one-day conference to get a sense of having a local connection. I went 2 years ago as well, if you guys remember that. I attended 2 years ago as well. And people that were in attendance was Larry Kudlow, who was the Director of the United States Economic Council, was a special guest there. He was to speak about the economy. We had reps from the Department of Transportation, Office of American Innovation, SBA, and HUD, who were also there as far as a panel to discuss community revitalization, specifically opportunity zones, infrastructure. I'll have to talk to Ken afterwards here at some point in time because obviously as we know we're going to by 2041, we've got to replace our pipes, right? And there is money there certainly in the federal government to have that. So having that potential, we'll have to talk about potential what grants may be available. Also, Director Jim Carroll, the Office of Drug Control Policy, spoke about opioids treatment as well as reps from the EPA and the Department of Education. There'll be much more details that I'll unleash to you guys at my October newsletter. Stay tuned for that. But again, it was very worthy of a 3-hour event at Washington, D.C. to really get a sense, to develop those connections, those comments, those connections. As many grants as you folks will fill out at the federal level, either USDA or other things, it's nice to have those potential contacts available there. So again, and what was very nice about it, and I will tell you was very refreshing about the conferences, there was no partisanship there. It was an exchange of ideas and questions and answers, and there were folks from both sides there, county commissioner wise, and we had some really good conversations. And I think if anything else, I think we showed a very good way that it doesn't have to be about partisan. It can be, we can get things done together. So I thought that was refreshing in terms of being able to be involved in that. And also too, by the way, no taxpayer funds were used in my trip because I spent all of my own money, so no taxpayer money was spent, which was a good thing, right? Drug Take Back Day, National Drug Take Back Day is Saturday, October 26th. There will be a special event at the Family Fair from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you have folks that need to get those little prescriptions out of their medicine cabinet and get them down, there's that National Day. Obviously, there are Red Med boxes here at the Albion Police Department as well as other locations. I know I talk to a lot of senior citizens, being in fact the amount of senior things that I'm involved in. And one of the difficulties they have, especially out in the rural areas, is they don't have a method to get to those red med boxes. So hopefully we're coming up with new ideas to be able to get those folks to do it, because many of them have lots of prescriptions that need to be disposed of. So hopefully we'll be able to do that going forward. But I just wanted to mention that as well. And then finally, my newsletter. Most of you folks get my newsletter. It's a great resource to know what's going on in and around the 7th District. The hard copies are available at the Albion District Library as well, so please take an opportunity. If you don't get it by email, and if you'd like to, I can get you signed up without a problem. It's totally discreet. Nobody sees your email. And again, it's a great resource to know what's going on in and around the 7th District. On pages 4 and 5 of this month's newsletter, I continue to push my road plan, which most of you know about my road plan very much because I've made it very well known to most. Unfortunately, the state legislature has unfortunately not really jumped on board, unfortunately. But, my road plan is very simple. And it just gets money where it's needed the most. It doesn't pit one against the other. It just gives it's a very simple, easy, flexible, efficient funding mechanisms to get the city of Albion the money they need, and it gets the townships the money they need. It actually gets everybody in the state the money they need. And it takes all of the other red tape and all of the other fingers in the pie away from it and gets the money where it needs to. So let me give you a perfect example where we stand right now. And again, this is no indictment on anybody. I'm picking on I'm picking on everybody. So maybe that's why maybe nobody's jumping on my plan. Maybe everybody's upset at me. But the governor, we know, wanted the 45-cent gas tax. And then the new funding mechanism, which was going to put 70% of that money to the east side of the state, which was not going to help the city of Albion whatsoever. And then if we look at the legislature and that $400 million of one-time funding that they wanted to put, that obviously she nixed. But if you look at the details of that funding, one-time funding, $243 million of that was going to go to 4 earmarked bridge projects in the state, in Dearborn and Harrison Township and Freeburg and in Lansing. Again, $243 million, which is 61% of the funding, is going to go to 2 or 4 projects that we'll never see anything of. $61 million goes to state trunk lines, which does have some impact here in Albion. But again, 75% of the money is going to other places where we'll never see it. And when you finally get down to the baseline, counties, we got $51 million. But when you divide that by 83 counties, based on the funding plan mechanism we have, it's about $614,000 a county. County will get about $400,000. That gets us about 1 mile of resurfaced road. I don't know how far that gets you. But here's what's even better, $22 million to cities and villages. When you divide that by 533 cities and municipalities in the state of Michigan, that gets you about $41,275. Now that's average. If you take in all the little factors that Act 51 does for us, Albion, you'll be looking at about $10,000 to $15,000. So when I say I'm picking on everybody, I truly am. I mean, there's no road plan out there that's good for anybody at this point in time. That's why I put together something simple, and I'm hoping to, if you get an opportunity, please call your state legislators and continue to push them on this. I would like just to have a discussion. If they would invite me to the Capitol, even one opportunity to discuss it. But you know what I hear from most people? You know what I hear from most people? It's too hard to change it. That's what I heard from some of our state people. Or it's too much work. Or that's the best we can do. Well, I don't know about you, but I know we elect those people at the state level, all of us do, to go get the job done. And for them to say it's too hard, or I don't really want to do it, I don't know. It frustrates me because you folks are driving down city streets in the city of Albion that are, let's just say, not real good city streets. We know that, right? So my point is, unless they really see it on the front line, they never will realize it, and I just would love to have the opportunity to do so. I've sent it out to different organizations. I've talked to our senator. At this point in time, I've gotten no response from at least our state legislature at this point in time. And I'm willing to talk to anybody. If the governor called me tomorrow, I'd be there. So again, this isn't a partisan thing. I've said this very clearly. Roads aren't a partisan issue. It's a people issue because it affects each and every one of us, no matter who you are. So quite frankly, why not just get it done? Let's do something different. And, it gets the city of Albion about $1.3 million extra a year for 5 years. So my plan does pretty good. I mean, I would say that's a positive move for the city of Albion. So, all right. Sorry, long-winded tonight. I know you guys is getting late, but I always like to do that. I like to give everybody an opportunity to see what's going on. I know no cowbell tonight because there's some of my eggs and issues and whatnot. I always get cowbelled out the door because 3 minutes is never long enough for me. So anyway, it's always great to be with you folks, and I would certainly appreciate any help you can give me to continue to push us up the ladder. And hopefully I'll get an opportunity to speak to you at some point. All right, congratulations and welcome again. Thank you.
City Manager's report.
Your Honor, members of council, you received the city manager's report from last Wednesday. I provide written reports, and those also are included in the council packets so that they are also available to the public to take a look at. This week, council, I noted for you that the mayor and I, last week when we met for the first time, in my official capacity, we talked about several issues. My work routine, and just so that everybody understands, my work hours are Monday through Friday, generally 8 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. The mayor asked about my routine meeting schedule. Very little of my meetings are routine, except for our management team meetings. Our regular management team meetings are the morning after regular council meetings, so we will be having one tomorrow morning. That is a time for me and my department heads and our key management staff to sit down together, go over the council meeting and any follow-up that we need to carry forward, as well as talking to each other about departmental issues, things that we can bounce off each other, help to build a good line of communication between all of us. And we did have an initial one last week, just as an introduction, and I'll tell you, we have a great group of people working for us, and they are truly looking for the guidance, mentoring and coaching from their city manager. They truly are committed to doing the best job that they can for the community. They're very dedicated people, and I am definitely looking forward to working with each and every one of them. We talked about lines of communication, and for those council members that I've already met with, and I reiterated it in my report, I wholeheartedly encourage council members to communicate directly with department directors when you have questions on departmental operations, departmental policies, our practices, how we do things. Please feel free to have that direct communication with department heads. I would only ask that if there is work to be done, if you need something done, if there is a task, that you make that request through me so that I can work with department heads. Number one, so that I know that that request was made and I can make sure that it's followed up on. But I encourage that communication. We are part of the same team working together to get things done. Council, administration, working with our citizens, and I think open communication, unfettered communication builds trust, and it builds it really builds a good working relationship. I went over the setting of council agendas, and what I will note from that is I provided you with the form that I would like all of us as administrative staff to use when we're submitting items to the city council for your approval, so that you can receive a standard format. The format is set up so that we're hopefully thorough in our analyses and in our recommendations to you, and it provides you with all the information that you need to be able to make decisions. The mayor mentioned to me a priority-based budgeting, and I was very impressed, Mayor, that you would ask me about that. I have never had experience with priority-based budgeting, but I am very familiar with the concept. And I don't know if there has been discussion on the part of the entire council about moving toward that type of budgeting. It's an entire process. It takes a long time. It's more than 1 year. It's a multi-year process to get there. But if there is interest by the entire council, I would love to have more discussion with you on what priority-based budgeting means. It actually has a step before it, and that is comprehensive strategic planning. That is an essential part of that, but I would love to have that discussion with you. Also, we talked about election integrity, and I want to assure City Council and our citizens that our city clerk is absolutely on top of things. This is already on her radar. You see what's happening at the national level. You've seen what's happened in 2016. And so that is a concern that everyone has, making sure that our elections are free, they're fair, and they're above question in the results. And I know that our clerk is working on instituting some changes this year with the absentee voter board, which I'm sure will keep her very busy. I was surprised that Albion does not have an AV board. Every community I've worked in has an AV board, so I was surprised that we don't have that here. But I know the clerk is working hard to make that happen, and that only further ensures the integrity of the election process. I invite council members to contact me and let me know if you're interested in individual meetings with me on a regular basis. I'm more than happy to set those up. I would love to have the one-on-one conversation with council members. I'd like to know more about what your individual goals and priorities are. It helps me better understand the council as a whole if I know where each council member is coming from. So please feel free to reach out to me and get individual meetings set up. They can be in the evening, they can be during the day, whatever is convenient for you. And I noted the management team meetings. We do have those scheduled regularly after your regular council meetings. I gave you a little bit of background on the last building authority meeting that I attended. Just purchasing and bidding procedures, the city manager is ultimately responsible for managing the purchasing processes of the city and making sure that we are complying with the competitive bidding requirements, the dollar limits on what we are allowed to approve without council approval, and what we need to bring to council. I am going to be having more discussion on that with the management team because they were very open and honest with me. They said, we're not sure we understand what the ordinance requires of us, and we would love to have that discussion so that we can comply with it. So actually it's on our agenda for tomorrow's meeting. And Your Honor, that is, I did want to note that I will be in Tennessee for the International City and County Management Association conference later this month. I will not be at the next regular meeting because of the conference. This is an important conference for me. I not only serve on ICMA's Sustainable Communities Advisory Committee and their Conference Evaluation Committee, but this year I am receiving my credentialed manager certification from ICMA, so I'm very proud of that, and my 30-year service award. So I apologize that thank you. I apologize that I will not be at the next meeting, but thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor and council member comments from council members.
Are you going to announce the meeting?
No comments? Okay, so Just a couple quick things. One, we are so happy you're here, and it's working out quite well. We're going to have a community welcome for the city manager and his husband Stephen on the 15th, which is Tuesday, the 15th of October, from 5 to 7 p.m. And I appreciate Councilmember Reed heading that up, and my wife's going to help you with that. So that'll be Tuesday, the 15th of October at the Isman House between 5 and 7 p.m. We have a special council meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. Everybody has the agenda for that. That'll be here. Just final words of thanking everybody that turned out for the community unity, citywide cleanup. Councilman or County Commissioner Tompkins, appreciate your presence, and lots of folks showed up. We had about 120 volunteers, painted lots of fire hydrants in various places, and park cleanup and whatnot, and bathroom cleanup. It was, city was looking really good for the Festival of the Forks, and it continues to get better. So that's all I have. Any other comments by council? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, adjourn.